Greetings and welcome to the Missions Podcast, the show that explores your hard questions on missions, theology, and practice to help goers think and thinkers go. I'm Alex Kochman, Director of Communications and Engagement with ABWE, joined once again by my good friend and partner in crime, Scott W. Dunford, pastor of Western Hills Church in San Mateo, California. And whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcasting app or watching us through the Wrath and Grace Universe app, or maybe even watching us on NRB TV, we're so grateful wherever you're getting this, or if you're watching us on YouTube as well, in which case go ahead and click subscribe and like and do all of those sorts of things. Every little bit of love that you show back to this show, whether it's by clicking subscribe or like or notifications, all of that helps other people discover this content. We're so grateful for each and every one of you who have. In fact, if you haven't yet done so, go ahead and log into your favorite podcasting platform if you're one of our podcasting listeners and leave us a positive rating and review. That will help other people discover the content and be blessed by it. You know, Scott, there's many ways that I think the Lord uses to bless and enrich our lives, to get us thinking about his mission, his heart for the nations, the heart for the nations that he wants us to share as well. I was just listening to a podcaster who I respect a lot, and the dude is orders of magnitude more intelligent than me, which really isn't saying much at all. But he said something that grieved me, Scott. This podcaster said, and you know, he's a theologian, he's brilliant, all these sorts of things, but he said, I can't stand reading fiction, were his words. Ooh. And I thought about my own life, my own heart, my own reading habits. I love reading theology. I love even engaging in stories of missionaries, but I think we need fiction in our lives to engage our imagination. And I would even go so far as to say, Scott, without spoiling some of the content of our guest in this interview that we're about to have, we need that to even provoke our spirits with regard to the Great Commission. I don't think that the part of your brain and your heart and your mind that you engage when you're reading fiction is separate from the part of your heart and mind that pertains to your walk with the Lord. I think that the imagination is the connective tissue of all of those things. So I'm really excited for this discussion we're about to have, Scott.
Yeah, me as well. And so we'll talk about that more. But also, Alex, this is kind of a big deal. This is our 450th episode.
Wow.
To our illustrious producer. So
I didn't get you anything.
That's I didn't get you anything either.
I don't even have my branded Missions Podcast mug here today. So I'm really slacking.
Well, anyway, to get that out of the way, I am excited to have our next guest to join us, who I became familiar with through reading missiology work. So he's got a book called Crossing Cultures in Scripture, which is kind of a staple in the missiological world. But also he's done other writing. We're going to talk about that today, too. So Dr. Marvin Newell, we're glad to welcome you to our show. He's currently retired-ish, ambassador at large for Missio Nexus. Before that was a professor at Moody Bible Institute and Seminary, and worked as a senior vice president for Missio Nexus. And, you know, probably even most important, he had served as a missionary for over 20 years in the country of Indonesia. We'll let him tell more about that. But it's so good to have you, accomplished author, missiologist. Welcome, Marv, to our show. We're really glad to have you today.
Well, Scott, thank you for that introduction. And Alex, great to meet both of you. I know that these podcasts get viewed by a lot of people, so I feel very honored to be able to say a little bit about the mission world in general, and maybe specifically about the book that I have that just came out.
So the new book that you've got come out is not a formal missiology book. You've written a lot of those books on mobilization, on crossing cultures, how to be a missionary, those kind of books. This one you've written most recently. I know you've written fiction before, a book called Taking You Under My Skin. I'll let you talk about the title in that in a little bit. But you know, as a missiologist, as an author, as a professor, as a missionary yourself, there's a lot of ways to approach missions. Why spend the investment of time and energy and emotion writing a work of fiction about missions?
Yeah, very good question. And, you know, I never thought I would do this, Scott. But as I started thinking about a way to portray unreached peoples to people that still in our churches don't really understand unreached peoples, I thought that by telling a story about them would be the better way to get into their hearts and minds. So I thought I would promote the awareness of unreached through the power of narrative. Everyone seems to like stories. Even Jesus told a lot of stories, did he not, to convey truth? And so I just thought that by writing a story that would be very realistic, and yet it was fiction. It's a historic fiction. It's based actually on the era of the Vietnam War and then the years following that, that people would engage in that book better than if I wrote another book about, we got to be aware of the unreached kind of a thing.
Well, I want to hear more about your motivation behind that, but can you just tease the story a little bit?
Yeah. What I did is that I took a story of a very young couple who gets engaged, who lived in the eastern part of the United States, actually, just a little bit east of you guys, there, the northwest suburbs of Philadelphia. And then he gets drafted. They go to Bible school for a year, intending to be missionaries. And then he gets drafted into the Vietnam War. He ends up as an Army medic that flies in on the helicopters, the medevac helicopters, to rescue wounded soldiers out. And during one of those missions, he gets captured because the helicopter gets exploded, and he gets captured and taken to a village across the border into Laos. And the people there in that village actually were they're very animistic, backwards people, never heard the gospel. And they were actually going to kill him as a sacrifice to the gods and to the spirits to stop the war, because so many other people were being put into the army. So he's able to survive that. And over time, he revives, and then he stays there to tell them the gospel story. And why he's trying to tell the gospel to them, they just don't understand. It's just so foreign to them until he sees a wedding ceremony take place. And in that wedding ceremony, the bride and the groom both say to each other in making their commitment vows that I am taking you under my skin. And for the first time, he found what he considered a redemptive analogy, a way of presenting the gospel to them. Now, that was a pet phrase that he and his fiancée used. You are under my skin is a phrase that they used that comes from a song. Probably most of our listeners maybe remember a song that was back popular about 20, 30 years ago. And so these people understand the gospel, because what he does, he takes John 3:16 and he retranslates it for them. And it goes like this: for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever takes them under their skin will not perish, but have everlasting life. And when they hear it in those words in that frame, they all understand it, and they all just kind of come to Christ as a whole tribe. They turn their lives over to God because now they understand what it really means to have a relationship with God. And that's kind of the gist of the story and how it goes.
Well, you did more than tease it, and there's a lot more, and we want to encourage people to pick it up, because I'm sure there's many twists and turns along the way. But then tell us then, okay, fundamentally, just like we talked about at the beginning, you felt like it was necessary to tug on people at the level of their imagination, not just the intellect. Why do you think fiction is the key to doing that? Is that the key to doing that? Because I can see how that could excite someone's imagination and affections and give them more of an understanding of what it looks like to minister among an unreached people group. I can also see a cynical response of, that's a great story. It didn't happen, so why should that move my heart at all? How can my heart be moved by something that's invented?
This story is a realistic historical fiction based on American history and what could possibly have taken place. And I've had readers tell me, after they read it, says, was that story really real? It just seemed that real to us, but it's not. It's just something that I pulled together. But, you write about what you know. And so I put it in the setting. I grew up in the Delaware Valley, the southern South Jersey area. And I placed the setting of this right there in that area there so that people can relate to this young couple as they go on mission for Christ. And then also the Vietnam War. I was not in the war, but I did a lot of study about it. I had a lot of friends and relatives that went off to the Vietnam War. And to put it in that area there, I think draws a lot of readers into an action packed time that keeps them engaged in the story. But the story also needed to have a love scene. I love not scene, but a love theme as well. A love theme. And so we have this young couple that are separated for years upon years upon years, never knowing if this medic is still alive or not. And so she is actually translating a Bible and a language in Thailand at the same time, not even knowing that he's just across the Mekong River doing the same thing up in a tribe, but they just never see each other and never know that. And then the end of the book brings some things together. But yeah, I just feel that people like something that is action packed, hopefully a page turner. And I tried to write it that way. I keep going from scenes from the village life to the American life and back and forth, and the government and what was going on in the government and so forth, and the war, to keep the story moving. But the whole reason I'm doing this is to bring attention to the reader of the plight of the unreached who still are awaiting the gospel.
Did you know that it can take anywhere from 18 to 24 months or more for the average missionary to raise their financial support? The journey to the field is an arduous one, and for some missionaries it goes by quicker than others. Other missionaries are waiting for the right prayer and financial partners to come alongside them and hold the rope for them as they go out to reach the lost. And so, would you consider praying for and maybe adopting an ABWE pre-field missionary, somebody that's already been commissioned and sent out from their local church, and the only thing keeping them from having a fruitful ministry on the field is simply their ability to get there? You can go to abwe.org/prefield and find a pre-field missionary, whether you just want to pray for them or whether the Lord would lead you to give to one of their ministries. Find one that you can support today at abwe.org/prefield. Scott, if I could throw something to you, I mean, I think this is an area where we as Christians struggle. Number one, we struggle to understand, what does it mean to be unreached? I mean, to really wrap your heart and mind around the fact that for so many in the world, more than 3 billion people, they've never heard of Jesus, right? They've never been exposed to any meaningful presentation of the gospel. I mean, that's hard for those of us that have grown up in the Christian West to grasp emotionally what that means, what that even signifies. But then secondly, like, we are deficient in our imaginations. I mean, outside of, I don't know, the Chronicles of Narnia and a couple of Frank Peretti books, most evangelicals are not consuming fiction at a level that's going to stir their heart and mind towards the things of God. Or if they are consuming fiction, it's at a pop culture level that isn't necessarily doing anything for them in their sanctification, right? And imagination, I think, is an area where we need to engage ourselves for the purpose of our discipleship, right, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I love reading fiction, and I've always enjoyed reading fiction. So I realize not everyone loves to read, but I've always loved reading it. But as I've gotten older, I remember reading, I can't remember who said this, but they strongly encourage that anyone who's preaching should read fiction, simply so you learn how to tell a story well and how to imagine things. But I've found, in my life, like, certain books at certain times just help elevate certain emotions and even affections toward things that I probably would never have thought of otherwise. And I've seen how a good book can be so useful in mobilization. I've shared this before, but Marv, I don't know if you've ever read the book Doctar. It's a kind of an important
Yeah.
story in
Yes.
ABWE's history, but the way
Right.
that was
Yes.
written was while it was truth, it was historical. It was written in a way that almost felt like fiction. And the fact that you were drawn into the story as you're learning more about Bangladesh and about missions and about the needs, about the gospel. I think of a book like Safely Home. When I was
Yeah.
on when I was on pre-field for missions, raising support, I would run into a lot of people who had been reading Safely Home, and while some things in that book are very dramatic and sensational in some ways, there was an element that caused people to realize that there are Christians in other parts of the world who aren't dealing with our situation. Or there's people who are completely lost and would be being able to enter into that world through the lens of fiction allows us to think and imagine things that we wouldn't otherwise. And I can see that how that could be so important for causing people to even think about what might missions life look like. So I really appreciate you putting the energy into this. What are you hoping that this book does in the hearts of minds of readers as they go ahead and read this book?
Well, I'm hoping for a couple of things to take place by people reading this. Um, I'm hoping that the reader will feel more compelled than ever before to serve God in whatever circumstance He has put them in. That it'll be an impetus for them. And I've had readers tell me this. I had one of my proofreaders say that once she finished reading the book, she says, "Boy, I just came away feeling like, what can I do more for God?"
Mm.
Whether it's in the mission setting or not, it makes no difference to me. But that they just feel touched that God has something for them to do in life because of the devotion that you see through this story that unfolds in this book. And secondly, I'm hoping that readers will become more aware of the plight of the unreached peoples and their living circumstances and how they get completely transformed from darkness to light when the gospel comes into their area, and they can see that through the story as it unfolds, and they themselves want to do something about it. Whether they go and commit themselves to actually going and uh, so, let's say be ABWE as missionaries because you have a lot of places that these unreached are found, or whether they become supporters of those that go, that they actually, just stand behind those that are willing to go the unreached. I'm hoping that the story helps just bring that kind of commitment out and that kind of knowledge out to the reader as they go through the book.
Story in general is the thing that awakens our imagination and our affections. It's interesting to me that God has given us not just abstract propositions in scripture, he's given us stories, many, a universe, a multiverse of stories, all interconnecting in special revelation. And when we want to point people's hearts to the global need that exists to bring the gospel to the unreached, story, whether fictional or non-fictional, has to be a part of that as well. That's really what drives and compels us. Too many of us only engage aspects of the faith that are just those abstract ideas and propositions by themselves. That's why missionary biographies matter as well. Something that I regret is I've not engaged as much missionary biography as you did growing up, Scott. And it did what you're describing. It gave you the ability to see yourself in the shoes of people going to faraway, hard places, doing hard things for the Lord. Because part of aspiring to serve the Lord in those ways is being able to see yourself in the shoes of those people, right, Scott?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm just thinking a couple books that I had, sitting here in front of me. I'm recommending to a young student through Gates of Splendor. You read this story about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone would ever call Jim Elliot normal, but he was normal in a way. He was an active, athletic, good-looking guy. Elizabeth was an active, engaged mind. They were serious about the Lord and how God used them, and they didn't expect to be at the center of one of the most famous missionary stories of all time. And they would not have probably chosen that in their own flesh, but God used that. And to read the pages of this story, that it reads like a novel, or to read like the story of Adoniram Judson, It Is Not Death to Die, and you find yourself, I just happen to have them sitting here on my desk because I'm recommending them to a young man I'm discipling. But you dive into those stories and you start to see like, oh, these aren't superheroes. These are people that had a life before God called them to the mission field. And then how did God use them? So I love that. And I think fiction is so necessary, especially because there's so much of the work of missions that we can't tell the story for lots of different reasons. And to be able to kind of use that device to be able to help people imagine more.
There's a famous kind of quote from Pluto where he said, writing is like throwing a seed over the wall. And what he meant by that is that you can argue to your black and blue with people and give them arguments and be polemic and apologetic and so forth, but it doesn't do the same effect as a story, as a something that you throw the seed over the wall. And I think the interpretation is that after a while, it's going to germinate and it's going to make a difference, and people are going to change because of that. And that's what story does.
So one I want to highlight one other part of the book that we talked about a little bit, but a lot of work needs to be done in the area of Bible translation, and you bring that whole idea of Bible translation right into the story. Obviously, that was a pretty strategic move on your part. What did you hope people kind of understand about the need for Bible translation and the work of Bible translation that you would bring it into the story in this way?
Yeah, and actually, I have two people doing Bible translations in the story. Both the main character Mike, and also his fiance Lisa, who's waiting and waiting, but she's not wasting her time. She decided to go off and do a Bible translation in Thailand at the same time, and so actually, two different Bible translations come out. But the reason why is because obviously the Bible is the basis for all we believe and practice, and if without the written word of God, no culture will be able to understand the will of God. And therefore, we need to be translating the Bible whenever the gospel enters into a new area there, into their language, their heart language, so that they can understand it and feel it for themselves, so that it makes sense for themselves. And so I do kind of labor through that a bit in the book of these two translations going on. In the end, Mike's translation gets miraculously saved from being discarded by the government, and it finally makes its way back into the village. But we find that the Bible is the root of all that we believe and practice, and therefore its translation in a heart language is so vital.
By the way, I'm over here furiously Googling things. That quote you mentioned about throwing a seed over a wall. So
Yeah.
Plutarch, I believe, said that, and it really is a reminder that when you write, when you throw ideas out there, it is like throwing a seed over a wall. You don't see what the outcome of that is. Story is again what tugs at the imagination, which engages not just the intellect but also the heart, the seat of the affections as well. And I think what we need to do by way of an exercise is just consider not just what it means at an intellectual level to be without reach outside of the access of missionary efforts, without the Bible in your language, and having never heard the gospel, and not just to ponder, okay, does that mean I feel hopeless? Does that mean I'm just blissfully ignorant? But to think about the sights and the smells and the sounds of what you're describing, for instance, a tribe that's willing to sacrifice humans. This isn't hypothetical. Groups
No.
like these exist in the world. I
Yes.
think that's what's striking about your book is that it is fictional, but it could be true. And there's real missionary accounts that probably mirror large chunks of the narrative. Marv, if people wanted to find real missionary accounts that echo elements of the story that you've arranged here, whose missionary biographies should they engage?
Well, I like the ones that Scott just showed us. They were great. I love the story To the Golden Shore, which is a story of Adoniram Judson. To me, that's my favorite missionary book. It's about his life story. And I just really, really love that book. And that's really motivating. You know, the publisher of my book is William Carey Publishing. And just at the same time my book has come out, they published a book entitled Jesus in the Buddhist Belt, which is live stories of what has taken place in Myanmar, really up-to-date stories. So that's a good book that's brand new out there as well. So there's a contrast between an older book and a brand new book that tells the stories.
Mm.
Yeah.
Where can people get a hold of? Oh, go ahead.
I said It's Not Death to Die of Adoniram Judson, but it's actually Hudson Taylor. I'd also encourage reading journals. Like I don't know if you've read any of Jim Elliot's journals. I mean, there's a lot of it, and it's not easy to just plow through like a novel or even a biography. But seeing the process of their mind as they're going through this. And then I came across William Carey's journals, which don't go very deep into his life, but especially covers his journey across the ocean and then those early days in India. And it's just it's a little overwhelming, but it's also encouraging because you think these guys all like were just spiritual giants. They never had a bad day. And to read him over and over again talk about just spiritual devastation and struggle and depression and work and exhaustion. And, it's been several days since I've been in God's word, or I've been in God's word, but I didn't enjoy it at all, and you're like, okay, it's actually really encouraging to me, that these were real flesh and blood people that loved the Lord and were faithful to the end, but it wasn't an up and to the right type of situation. It was ups and downs, just like I have.
That's what stories do. Help bring that out. And you said they never had a bad day. They had many bad days. Both of them lost two different wives, and so it was really, really tough. And it's just a testament to fortitude when you read about them and what they're doing and just staying the course. And I'm hoping that my book brings that out too, about staying the course, of staying with one's calling and just seeing the importance of walking with God through all these circumstances.
Again, that's what a good story can do. But you've also written more than just fiction. You've been writing for years on topics to get people to recognize the need for more gospel access around the world. So before we break from our main episode here and invite people who are a part of our subscription family to join us for our bonus segment, which we'll tell you more about in just a moment, Marvin, where can people go to find more of your other writings? And what else have you written just briefly? There's the book, A Third of Us. You want to just give us a summary of that and where people can get a hold of you and some of your other writings on these topics?
Yeah, probably the best place to go is the website missionbooks.com, where three of my books happen to be. Also, Moody Publishers did my book on the martyrs of Moody, which are true stories of 21 martyrs that were missionaries of Moody Bible Institute. So those are good places to go. If you just go to Amazon and type in my name as an author, you can find the other books as well.
Very good. So be sure to check out those resources. We at ABWE here, the Missions Podcast, belongs to ABWE, which is a global family of ministries. We've given out hundreds, at least, maybe thousands, but definitely hundreds of copies of A Third of Us, which is talking about the fact that a third of the planet is unreached with the gospel. And of course, Marv, your involvement in that book has been a blessing to many people as well. But for our bonus segment, which was something that we offer as a thank you to those who financially partner with this ministry at $9.99 per month at missionspodcast.com/premium. Or if you're an Apple Podcasts listener, you can subscribe directly now through Apple Podcasts app. And for your gift, we regularly thank our subscribers by giving them access to our bonus show, the Overtime segment. And for that, Scott, we're going to be diving into fiction books that need to be on the shelves of every Christian and of every missionary. And so we look forward to that conversation as well. But Marv, thank you for joining us, and remind people how they can get a copy of this book as well. Is it on Mission Books? Is it .com?
Missionbooks.com is the best place to get it.
Very good. And of course, the Missions Podcast is a ministry of ABWE. To learn more about ABWE, go on over to abwe.org. We're a global family of ministries with workers reaching 90 nations with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And to take your next step in the Great Commission, come on over to ABWE's site, check them out. But to get more content, go to missionspodcast.com. And if you'd like to leave us a note or a suggestion for a future topic of conversation, alex@missionspodcast.com is the email, or scott@missionspodcast.com. If you want to complain about me to Scott, go behind my back, you're more than welcome to do that. You wouldn't be the first one. And we're grateful to each and every one of you for listening. Until our next episode, go make disciples.